Om Sai Ram, Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Om Namo Narayana. Thank you so much to this sacred space called Saika Sangh for this opportunity yet again. I don't know how many times I've been blessed to be able to share whatever little my life journey and experiences have been in this space. I think we go back a few decades now. So coming back into this space is always, it's a feeling of coming back home, coming back into a space from where my own journey started, because my spiritual journey started with Swami um, when I was very, very young, like for so many of us. And today's topic is very interesting because I thought that's actually perfect because it, in a way, is reflective of where many of our journeys are headed at this point. And this is really the reconnection with the inner guru. So let me backtrack a little bit. And again, I won't be speaking for all the time. I'll speak for 15, 20 minutes and then just open it up for others to share their thoughts, comments, ask questions, whatever it is, because this should be a discussion and a dialogue, not just me sitting here and speaking. Um, I want to go back to 2011 and the time that Swami left his body. Um, that was a turning point in my life. It was almost as if this benevolent, beautiful energy that held everything together for me in my life, in my work, in my psyche. It's as if something just was removed and just fell apart. And I remember falling into this deep, dark space, which now when I look back, I tell people it's one of the spiritual initiations that all of us have to go through at various points in our soul's journey. It's called, people call it the dark night of the soul. And what I didn't realize that was the beginning of this dark night of the soul for me. And it lasted over many, many years. And at that time, when I struggled with understanding what was happening, I felt I was being punished for some reason because Swami had gone and I didn't know who else to turn to. Everything in life was falling apart. My body, mind, emotions, nothing made sense. I didn't know where to turn. It was at that time I also developed a heart issue, which, with His grace, in 2014, I got the surgery for that done in Swami's Super Speciality Hospital in Whitefield. It was a series of, miraculous events which got me there. But when that procedure was happening, I was conscious, and they had probably given me local or epidural anesthesia. I don't remember what, and I distinctly remember Swami's presence in that operation theater. And it was the same team of doctors who had actually worked on Swami when he was in the hospital who were working on me, Dr. Dash and a whole set of other doctors, very, very competent people. And once the procedure got completed, the first message that came to me after a couple of days from Swami was, your Advaitic journey has begun. And I remember thinking, actually, I remember the feeling of my heart sinking because the journey from Dvait to Advait is not an easy one for most of us who come into this space, primarily from the path of bhakti or devotion. It is so much easier to love somebody, to revere somebody, to look up to somebody outside of you. And so for me, that was Swami. With any complaint, any problem, any issue, one would go running to him, either in Parthi or, in one's own home and heart. And then when he turned this entire thing around and said that your Advaitic journey has begun, I knew that something significant was going to shift. It's almost a decade of that journey having started, and where I am today is with this humbling realization that we are living in extraordinary times where many of our souls have reached a certain point in our own soul journey in terms of spiritual maturity, where we are ready to make that journey back home to ourselves, to that inner God, to that inner Guru. And that is what I'm going to be sharing a little bit today. It is Ramana Maharshi, who said that there is no difference between God, your Guru, and your inner self. It is the same energy. And in this reconnection with the source of everything that is within us, the entire focus of our journey begins to shift very subtly but very, very firmly. Up to this point, even in bhakti, most of us are focused on the externalities. We are focused on the world outside, the world of the five senses, the world of the panchendriyas. Our God, while he or she lives in our heart, is also there in an idol, in a form, in a photo, in a lingam, whatever it is, whatever way, in Devi. And everything is a constant engagement of us with the world around us. When the journey towards the inner Guru begins to take place, there is a push from outside for these senses to actually begin to turn inwards. And this is not at all an easy shift. Some of the symptoms, if I can call it that, when this shift from external to internal begins to happen, a lot of the things that would interest you, would hold your interest, would hold your passion, would give you a sense of purpose in the world outside, begins to fall apart, begins to diminish. And you begin to feel very adrift. All those things which used to really keep you going, hold your sense of self and identity together, begins to dissolve and fall apart. The other thing is, in terms of your relationship with yourself and others, there is a significant shift. There is greater dissatisfaction in what you can get from any other person outside of you. And it's not an easy thing, because that means you have to constantly redefine what expectations, what your own sense of what you want from each other is, and all of this begins to get redefined. The third thing that happens when the inner Guru begins to call you is the beginning of what is called the void, the silence. Increasingly, one will begin to feel as if there is a silent space within which is pulling. And it's not an easy space, because it feels like a void which is going to completely engulf you. Which is why, for a lot of people, when the inner journey begins, they begin to feel they're getting depressed, or they're in some kind of depression. Because I also work, like Upasana said, with a number of people as a psychologist. By now, one is able to make out when it's actually not clinical depression, but it's actually the sign of the person shifting to the next level on their spiritual journey, where a lot of the props begin to drop off, and there is this sense of isolation which begins to grow. The opportunity and the challenge when that void, that shunya, begins to reach out to you is to stay with it. To stay with that emptiness without having a need to constantly fill the silence with noise is actually the challenge and the opportunity. We all need support during that stage, and because this is such a perfect universe, everything is calibrated so finely, you will get the support you need at that point if you're open. The support may not come in the form that you expect. The support may not come from the people that you expect, but the support will be there to help you learn how to stay within that void whenever it appears in your life. If you're able to stay long enough with that void, something begins to dissolve and something else begins to emerge. The emergence in that space is that of the silent inner voice, which is an actual voice of God, Guru, Self, whatever you call it. And this is your inner GPS, which then begins to guide you constantly. In 2011, when Swami left his body and I began to go through a series of breakdowns, I remember at one point I thought I was going to die because this whole process many a times feels like death, feels like dying. It's not an easy process. And I remember one message that he gave to me through somebody else, through another Sai brother, was that I may let you fall, but I won't let you break. You have to find the Sai within. That is the journey now. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we're all gathered here today on the 22nd of April, 2023, a decade and more after Swami has left. Another message he gave at that time is we all said, I think all of us said, Swami, why did you leave so soon? You had promised you'll be with us in 96 years. And one of the messages that came again strongly at that point is, he said, I had to break open your hearts. Only then would you find me. And all spiritual journeys are testimonies to the fact that it's pain and suffering which sometimes fast forwards our spiritual growth rather than that sense of comfort and complacency. So I feel today, whoever is gathered in this space, suggested this topic, the inner sense I got is that whoever is here on this call or whoever will be listening to this recording later, these are people for whom this journey has already begun or is about to begin. The journey into the void is the final pilgrimage we make after lifetimes and lifetimes of separation, of playing different roles, of coming and going, of wearing different garbs. That final period is the entry into the void, into which when we go, there is no us left. And I think I have in one of my previous talks mentioned, and I'll mention it again, what Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said so beautifully. The journey of the soul is the journey of the salt doll, which jumps into the ocean to measure its depth, not realizing that one day it will just dissolve into the ocean. This is the journey into the void. So the journey of us to connect with our inner guru is nothing but this disillusion of the separation that we feel we are as a personality, as an ego identity. My sense that, oh, I am Lakshmi, this is so and so. It's very interesting when anybody, reads any kind of introduction nowadays. I feel a certain sense of awkwardness because I feel that these are all external labels or definitions which in the larger scheme of things don't matter at all. Who am I at a soul level? I am you and you are me. There is no differentiation. In the Bhagavatam, it is said very, very beautifully in one of the stories, I don't remember which one, but it's said very beautifully that the entire journey of the Jivatma to the Paramatma is this, to understand that there is no, to experience that there is no separation. And it goes on to say, he who sees separation will die 1,000 deaths, which means he who continues to see that differentiation between you and me and the other will have to come back over and over and over and over. 1,000 deaths means 1,000 rebirths till we realize there is no other, there is just one. So the interesting thing that begins to happen is when the sense of self dissolves, and this is something our entire life and probably lifetimes we've we've tried to hold on to, we've tried to build our personality, our identity, our achievements, all of these things which in the externalities of Maya are told to us as being important. When all of this begins to dissolve, then what is it we hold on to? Who do we hold on to? And that's the last part of what I want to say. The entire journey to find the inner guru is actually a process of not holding on to anything or anyone. It's a process of letting go. It's a process of letting go of just everything that you have thought is you or is your understanding of the world or life around you, and is to become more and more comfortable with not knowing. Because when we enter the space of the void, we are actually entering uncharted territories. And you know how it is in darkness. If you're in a room which is completely dark and you're not familiar with anything, in any objects in the room, you'll keep trying to reach out and cling on to something so that you don't bang against things, you don't stumble and fall, or you need to find the light switch. It's a little bit like that. That is the time we have to consciously, with conscious awareness, turn our attention inwards and find that lamp which is there in each of our hearts, in our sacred hearts. There is a lamp, there is a light which is eternal, which has been there from the time this Atma, this Jivatma decided to separate from that Paramatma. And it carries that light, which is that lighthouse which will lead us back home. And so this is the time we have to connect with that stronger. How do we do that? It's actually far simpler than we think. Every day, whatever pujas you do, whatever chantings you do, whatever other sadhanas you do, take out some time to sit doing nothing in silence, preferably in a dark space. So if you have a slightly cave-like room, a darkened room, sit with yourself every day without any other activities. So you're not chanting, you're not listening to music, you're just sitting with yourself, doing nothing. A lot of people I work with really struggle to do nothing. There is a constant need to keep doing one activity to another, one thought to another. I would say this is when you have to desist all activities and just sit with yourself. Sit for a few minutes, start with 5 minutes, go into 10, go into 15. And in that space, when you're sitting in that darkened space, yes, you can light a candle or a diya. Just focus on two things. One is your breath. The reason we focus on the breath is because the mind hates a vacuum. So it will rush to fill your mind with like 2000 thoughts. But if you consciously take your awareness to the breath, those thoughts will begin to settle down. It doesn't matter if these are important thoughts, these are spiritual thoughts, these are nonsensical thoughts, it doesn't matter. We just want the blankness. No thoughts is what we want. So we bring our attention to our breath and we begin to focus on the breathing. As we focus deeper on our breath, turn your attention into that flame in our hearts. Many of us here are very familiar with the Jyoti meditation. The Jyoti represents that inner light, that inner guru, that inner guide, that God, that self, that love. Consciously connect with that light within and just sit doing nothing. Sometimes, after some time, that light might actually dim and go off, and you just experience that void, which is absolutely blank and dark. Stay with it. Many times at that moment is when you feel you need to get up, switch on the light, drink water, do something else. If you can slowly practice staying with it longer and longer, something very beautiful and profound, which is beyond words, begins to open up. When you touch that, and I have to be very honest, I can't say I stay anchored in that all the time. I don't at all. But there are moments in which one touches that void. And if one can stay with it after the initial discomfort of being empty, there is something which begins to emerge, which is this bliss, this happiness, this joy, which has nothing to do with what is going on around you, with the externalities of the world or your own existence. It is something which is a wellspring that is within us at all times. So, the invitation on this journey and the gift a real guru gives us. You see, the external guru is none other than the same energy which has taken on various forms to guide us back to ourselves. So, the greatest gift a real guru gives is at the right time when he knows we are ready to, as a toddler, crawl, and then from crawling, when we are ready to walk, and from walking, when we are ready to run. He or she, it just removes the energetic hold and says, go, be free, live your life, and go back home to yourself. You are that Purnata. You have always been complete. You are that completion. Remember that completion all the time. Stay in conscious awareness of the fact that you're already complete and live your life from that point, from that place. And everything begins to look and feel very, very different because we have actually reclaimed that Purnata which is within us. I must share that there is a quickening that has happened over the last couple of decades in the energetics that govern our planet and our solar system. This has to do primarily with the change in the behavior of the sun. And so the sun at this point is extremely active. And some of us who've been following the sun's activities over the last decade and a half, and again, it's all Swami's grace that I even got guided in this direction of understanding what is happening in terms of the planetary energies. What we realize is that there is a quickening of Earth's heartbeat. So it's a little bit like if the Earth used to be pulsating, and there is a term called the Schumann's resonance, which is an actual physical term. Earth used to have a resonance in terms of it used to be 7.83 hertz, which was a normal heartbeat. Like for us, if we say 72 to 80 is kind of like a normal range like that. And what started happening from 2012 is it began to become faster and faster a few times a year. What's happened in the last few years, and especially this year, is that the heartbeat has increased to such an extent. I don't even know when it is 7.83 anymore. It is 36, 26, 85. It's crossed 100 a few times. So, what this does is it's just like when we get tachycardia or our heart begins to race, we have a lot of energy, a lot of thoughts, a lot of energetic bombardments happening from all over because it feels as if we are running on an energetic treadmill. And that is why when we get up in the morning, most of the times we don't get up feeling relaxed because even sleep time, there is so much of activity going on in the neural networks because they are overactivated because of this. And then that gets coupled with all the field of radiation that we live in, 5G radiation, extremely potent, microwave radiation, wireless radiation, and God knows what else. So, in this time, our neurons of the brain are actually overexcited most of the time. Hence, that sense of feeling relaxed has become a luxury. The only way we can counter this is by actually slowing down enough to be able to get off the treadmill. Right now, we're all like people who are running on this treadmill, and the speed and the incline on the treadmill is automatically increasing. So, you have to first slow down. You have to reverse this process, slow down enough for it to be safe for you to jump off the treadmill. And the only way to do that is by consciously getting back to your breath. Because when you focus on your breath consciously, your thoughts begin to settle down. You're not trying to push your thoughts away. You're not trying to avoid your thoughts, because always remember, anything you resist will persist. You see the thoughts coming like clouds and going like clouds. You're just not going to identify with them as my thoughts. These are just thoughts, thought forms. We may not realize it many times. A lot of the thoughts we pick up is what is there in the field around us. For many of us who live in apartment blocks, you'll be amazed at how much more energetic smog we pick up, because we're tightly packed into apartments like sardines. So everybody's thought waves are actually, sort of going across. And that's why if you're living in an area where people are by and large not very peaceful, that begins to impact your own energy system, your own energy body. We are far more connected than we realize we are. The other thing to do is to go back into nature consciously, in whatever way, to earth yourself, to ground yourself, to let go of all this extra electromagnetic smog that builds up on a daily basis. What happens is, when there are huge emissions from the sun, one of the terms we use to call them is solar flares. When we have these large solar flares, there's a lot of energy, electromagnetic waves which come onto the earth, and they impact our entire body, endocrine system, the circulatory system, the neural system. What happens is, at that point, we are probably sitting in front of a laptop or with our mobile, adding to this energetic intensity. So if we don't get out into nature, walk bare feet where possible, or sit on a bench bare feet, so that all this extra energy gets earthed, or put our palms against the trunk of a tree so that it pulls out all of the smog. People say plant trees. It's not just the oxygen. There is so much more we get from plants and animals and trees and earth and so on. We need this to stay balanced and sane in these times. I think most of us know people are having mental health issues like never before. As a species, we've never had this kind of mental health breakdowns and pressures like what we are seeing post 2020. One of the biggest reasons for this is this electrical, magnetical buildup that is happening in our system every single day. We don't have to do anything for it. It's just the way we live lives, the way we are all packed in each other's proximity, the way we are constantly, running from one deadline to another deadline to another deadline. We have these to-do lists. We have various, things we feel we need to achieve. By the time we lie down to sleep, also, our mind is so hyper. It takes so much time for it to slow down. When we go into the sleep state, again, we are not able to go into deep sleep, because everything is very much at the beta state. It's not going into alpha or deeper into delta or theta. So all of this is interconnected. So we have to, the antidote is to slow down. Slow down, slow down, slow down your breath, slow down your activities, slow down your conversations, slow down. A lot of people love to travel, and I think travel is great because it opens yourself up to so many amazing experiences. But when you travel also, don't pack your schedule in a way that, you've got a tick box of 10 things to do in one day. Then you're missing the whole point. When you travel to any place, slow down enough to feel the energies of that place, of what it wants to share with you, of what it wants to give to you. When you begin to slow down into the moments of life, something internally opens up. And so that is the way to connect with this silent space within. Swami used to always, one of the things I remember since childhood, Swami used to always say, you have to be discerning and understand what is essential and what is non-essential. See, in this path, nobody is telling us not to do our karmas. In fact, karma yoga is such an important way to reach that goal, that divine. But many times, because if we are not in tune with that inner voice, that inner guru, we add so many layers to our life which are probably non essential. So try to simplify life by actually seeing what is it I need. So one of my friends, actually not a friend, but somebody I look up to, I am connected with him, but not in a personal capacity, is Shantam Seth, who's the brother of Vikram Seth, and Shantam heads the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh's, Ahimsa Foundation in India. So I remember listening to an interview with Shantam decades ago. He used to be in a very high profile job in the UN, and he was working with refugees and so on. And at the same time, he was a peace activist. Till he had this moment of revelation where he realized that I cannot fight for peace because the energy of peace and the energy of fighting are two completely different things. So that kind of that epiphany suddenly, made him look at his world of work and nothing made sense anymore. So he sat down with his wife and they worked things backwards. They kind of thought of the current lifestyle they had at that point, and they said, okay, we can simplify a few things, but more or less living a decent life. How much money do we need to make in a year to keep it going? And they probably came to some figure which is what they wanted to do. And Shantam says at that point, his life was he was living out of suitcases, just, in country after country where there was some kind of conflict and so on. And so when he left all that and he realized this is what we need to live a comfortable life, but not more than this. He then changed his life work plan to realize all he needed to do in an entire year was to take 45 people to the Himalayas for a retreat once a year. That gave him the money he needed for the entire year. And the rest of the time, he said, I would watch the grass blades grow. I would have a cup of tea with my child. I would have time to listen to him laughing. I would have time to hear the bird songs. And that is how mindfulness became a part of his life. So there is some wisdom in this. When we work backwards, what is it? Where do we want to be? And how do we simplify our life in order to make that happen? Automatically, a lot of the non essentials will drop off. So, again, this is just a sharing. You have to see what makes most sense. Sometimes we just add on activities because we are told progress and success means more, 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 more. But I would say let's pause and see sometimes less is actually more. And I think it's that lessening which brings us a lot of peace. And you know what? If we move into this space of less is more, of sharing what we have with each other, there is enough and more on this planet for everybody. This whole sense of ownership and doership is what keeps us trapped in the cycle of cause and effect of karma. As we are willing to let go of both ownership and doership, doership does not mean inactivity. Letting go of ownership or doership is even when we are active in whatever it is we are meant to do, there is no self, a sense of I am the doer. It's more of it's being done through me. And that shift is actually what breaks the chains of karma. As long as there is an I which is got this sense of doing, you might be doing the most amazing work, the greatest selfless seva, but if that I is there, you're still caught in that cycle. So this less of becoming less, of doing less, of being more, this unbecoming, if I can call it, is really what takes us inwards. And in those moments when you're listening to the birds, you're in nature, there is a blankness. You're in that state where there is either no thought or very few thoughts, and you just are. And in that, there is nothing but peace, profound, deep peace. That is that taste of that permanent peace and that invitation. There would be moments, moments of joy, bliss, when you see a beautiful sunrise, when you are in love. These are all profound when we used to be in front of Swami, and there would be those moments when he would send love our way and our hearts would just overflow and we would cry. There is no us, there is no thought, there is just this deep sense of connection. These are all moments we have all experienced. How do we consciously invite more such moments and eventually permanently anchor ourselves in that? That is the journey of the seeker.